Hello and welcome to Creating Assessments. This video will give you some resources for working with the old interface on EdForiaWare and some practice with the upcoming new interface that will be released soon this fall. Thank you for joining us as we soar together into success. I'm assuming that you've been creating tests on your own for years, and probably some of you years and years and years. So this video is not going to teach you the content and how to build a good assessment, but it's going to show you how to use the tools that are available for you in your classroom. In order to get to EdForia, you're going to go to the BISD website, go to Quick Links, click on EdForia, continue to the login page, and enter in exactly what you enter to get into your email. Notice that I have not placed the @BISD portion because we do not use that when we log into our email account or onto our computers. To get into the EdForia site, you're just going to now click onto EdForia. And as teachers, you'll see two tabs that are going to be very important to you. The Analyze tab is where you're going to view your student data after assessments have been given. The Assessment tab is the tab that you will use when you create an actual assessment. Now you might be thinking, okay, I haven't done this in a long time, or I've only done this through different platforms. How do I do this here? Let me take you to a resource that's very helpful, and that is the Help section right up here in the top right portion of your screen by your name after you logged in. Click on Help, and you'll notice that they have a very robust Help section. If you have questions with Strive, your T-Tests, or Teacher Self-Report at the beginning of the year, etc., you can click into that section. But I want you to follow with me into the Aware portion. And since this video is on creating tests for teachers, I want you to see that there's a section that says Teacher Test Creation. When I click on this portion, it will take me to a training area where it tells you exactly step by step how to create an assessment, where to click, what to do next, etc. Step-by-step instructions on this, how to pull out the student expectations, how to weight a question, etc. I can go back and how do I administer this test? As a teacher, click on this portion right here, and it's going to tell me again, this is how I administer that test as a teacher, which should look familiar to you if you have done the TELPUS Progress Monitoring or entered in ratings as a teacher. This shows you how to begin the test, etc. You can also, as a teacher, create a team of teachers so that you can share assessments. So if I go over here to Teacher Teams, I can get an overview of what exactly is a team of teachers. How do I create and manage that team? In other words, who can play on my team and who can't as a teacher? And then how do I create a team test? Many of these training sections have a short video that you can watch, and then text as well, again with screenshot pictures so that you can see what you need to do to create your assessment. Okay, so this training will show you where the resources are, which we've seen some of the resources, but this is a time of transition also for EdForiaWare, where they've got their old interface, which after you've created an assessment, and I'm going to go back into EdForia, when I'm on the Assessment tab to start, and you'll read in the resources how do I create a new test, pretty easy. I just click here on Create a New Test, and it gives me different ways of creating a new test. So I'm going to create a blank new test. Off screen, I'm clicking on Next. And then I start to fill in the blanks of what do I want to label this test. And I'm just going to label this practice. The default grade level is kindergarten, so if you can't find your assessment later, look in the kindergarten file. It's most likely there. I'm going to change out my end date. That's when the test will be done. If I only want to just practice and play around a little bit, I'm going to leave this test in the practice and training folder, but you can choose the folder that's appropriate to you, and I would just choose your cluster, or you can choose campus assessments, and probably most likely campus assessments once you begin to work on this. Click on Next. You don't need to pick a school because you'll already be defaulted to the campus that you're at. You need to pick your student expectations. I'm going to pretend that this is an 8th grade science test that I'm working on. And then I'm clicking Next off screen on the bottom right. Now I'm done, and I have the bones of my test built. Again, I'm going to show you how on the new interface how to work in some of these questions. The concept is basically the same, where you would do the same thing at the question site here. In order to start playing with the new interface, we need to go to the teacher demo site, which is at awaretest.schoolobjects.com. Please note that this site is for practice only. So Texas users all across the state are using this site. Know that you can't break the site. It's out there for practice, but also know that what you create on this is not publishable. You would need to go to your own Aware teacher making tool in order to do that. So you'd need to use your own assessment tab after you've logged on to our BISD Edaphoria site in order to build a test that's publishable. But we want you to practice with the new site. So please go on to this awaretest.schoolobjects.com with the username teachereddie@aware.net, and the password is newtest123. As you log into the new interface, there's a few things for you to remember. First of all, this is not our BISD website. Teachers all across Texas are using this website to practice. But again, as I've said before, what you're working on the practice site is not publishable. Just a few other things for you to remember. You can't break this system. It's for practice. This is a good time for you to learn the ropes of test creation or practice building assessments. And this is a temporary site. As soon as the live interface, the new interface is live, this site will be taken down. So what are we waiting for? Let's choose our test type, choose our question type, and let's play and have some fun. So here we are. I've typed in awaretest.schoolobjects.com. And here we are at the practice site. You'll notice that this is a practice site because it's all teal colored, as opposed to when we log in to use our real site, it's got orange, and Eddie stands out more because there's an orange background. I'm going to log in as that teacher, so I'm going to type in Teacher Eddie. Eddie's the little cat that's watching us over on the left at aware.net. And the password is newtest123. You'll notice that our only choice in this practice site is to choose a where, so I'm going to choose a where. And the name of the teacher that we're in their demo site is called the Eddie Demo Teacher. So we'll all be on the same site as we log in to practice. You'll notice that this is what a teacher view looks like when you log on. You have less tabs off on the side. You do have the Analyze tab and the Assessment tab and the Students tab. The Analyze tab, as we've said before, is where you drill down to one of your courses or all my students to look at data that's already in the system. The Assessments tab is where we go to create an assessment. So I'm going to click on the Assessment tab, and you can see that there's a couple listings of tests that have already been created, but I want to play around and create a new teacher test. So I am going to do that. You'll notice underneath this assessment option is team management, and you can read more in the help section on how to create your teams, but I'm going to create a test just for me and my kiddos. And when I click on that create a test, I have a few options. I can create a quick test key, which is just going to give me the ABCD, FGHJ options of a bubble sheet. I can create a blank new test. If in the past, last year, for example, I created a test for my social studies students and I want to use that same test again, just update it for this year's data, I can copy that test that I created, or I can copy a test that's already been created within the item bank. But I'm going to create a new blank test. After I do that, down on the bottom right, it says Next. Then I'm going to add in the name of my test. This is a practice test. I'm going to do a 7th grade math. And I'm going to put in my initials just so that I can find it later and know that it's me. And I'm even going to put today's date on here of 9/3/2018. The more information you have on your title of your test, the easier it is to go back to it later. Again, remember the default is kindergarten. So if you're not making a kindergarten test, you're going to need to update that grade level and click on Next. Now I need to choose my primary SEs. Since I chose 8th grade or 7th grade math, I'm going to open up 7th grade, open up the folder that says Math, choose the Math 7th grade TEKS, and click Next. Now I've done with my test, I just need to click Finish. And really I haven't built my test yet, but I have built the bones of that test. After you've clicked on Finish, you'll notice that your screen view is quite different. One of the first things I'm going to do is to maximize the amount that I can see within my screen. So I'm going to choose this little tiny arrow that will collapse this side navigation panel. Now you'll see on the left panel I have the structure of the assessment, and on the right side is where we're going to start creating the assessment. One of the first things I need to do is correct an error that I made. As I was telling you that the default grade level is kinder, I chose 8th grade, but I really meant to choose 7th because we've got a 7th grade assessment with 7th grade TEKS chosen. So I'm going to make that change. So now we have a 7th grade assessment. So when we're looking for a test, it'll be under 7th grade. Now you'll notice over here there's a plus sign when we're looking at the question view. The question view is where we're going to build our questions. The layout view is where you can see what it looks like. The key view is where it will show you what your answers are. And then the admin view is where you're going to make some of the choices to make it publishable once we're actually on our own site. Remember that this is a demo site, so you can create and you can play with some of the features, but you will not be able to publish off of this. So this is just really a playground for you to play within. I'm going to click on that blue plus sign and it's going to give me two options. The first one is a new test item, which means that I'm going to create an item myself, or I can search the item bank. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new item. Now you'll notice that there are several things that it will allow me to do. It will allow me to enter in my test question. So if I had created a test already, I could just copy and paste onto this section here, but I'm going to pretend that I'm typing in my own question and putting in my own responses. And obviously what I'm doing here is just nonsense. You can add in a picture. So let's suppose that underneath my question, better put a question mark, we want a map of Italy. So I'm going to go to my saved files and choose a file in pictures, and I'm going to choose the map of Italy and insert that map. Obviously I wouldn't be doing this on a math test, but I want you to see the applications that are possible, and there within my question is the map of Italy. You can also link resources to this and add in primary and secondary standards. So to add in a primary, and again we have a map of Italy, but let's suppose that this is a math test. You wouldn't just be guessing and picking, but I'm going to say that this particular math question links to 7.4a. I can also choose a secondary standard, one of the process skills of 7.1c. Again, you would not be making this stuff up as you're going along. You would already have your test question created. So I've created my first test question. Let's create another one. I can either choose to put it down below the first one or up above. There was a plus sign up there as well. And I'm going to choose this time to search the item bank. When I do that, you'll notice that the SEs pop up. We have process up at the top, and then we have our supporting with the S and our readiness standards with the R. And again, you would not be just making this up, but I am going to choose this particular SE, and you'll notice that it's thinking, and then it gave me a whole list of questions that are linked to the Student Expectations 7.4e that I chose, which is a supporting standard. I could choose by complexity. You'll notice here it says high, that question's high, the next one's low, the next one's medium, etc. I could choose between the item banks that we have available and so on. But you would read through this list of questions and choose the one that you like the best. Okay, I'm going to choose this item right here. Whoops, let me try that again. Let me go back to 7.4. Sorry, I was a little bit too fast on the draw there. I chose a different SE. It really doesn't matter for our purposes here. You can see that some of them have some rationale. And I'm going to choose this particular assess question. You notice that it adds it over here, and then I can choose to add it to the test. So I can look at several and decide if I want them all, if I want some of them, none of them, etc. I'm going to choose this one, which looks like it's a griddable question as well, and I'm going to add those two items to the test with just that click of a button there. And you'll notice that it's working, and in a second it'll take us back to see our test. One thing I've noticed is that since this is an open site practice to all of the state, you'll notice that there's times it does some sort of glitchy wait things because someone else might actually be working on the test that you're working on because they're playing with this. But you'll notice now it gives me an overall summary of what I've created. I've added 3 questions. One was a low question, one was a medium question, and one was not ranked with a complexity. So we'll have to rank that ourselves. You'll notice that it gives me the standards also, and you might be wondering why are there 4 standards, but I only have 3 questions because remember that 2 of them have process skills. You'll notice that it also tells me the type of questions. We have 2 selected response, which are multiple choice, and then we have 1 numeric response. And you can see our test here as well. We could choose to look at it in the layout view and move the questions around, etc. But I think that you're getting the idea of this. Let's suppose now, though, that we're no longer working on a math test, but that we're working on a language arts test, because language arts is always a little bit more complicated. So I'm going to choose to add another question on. I'm going to search the item bank. Again, you wouldn't have to do this. You could certainly add in your own story and your own questions. I'm going to choose to view resources, but you know what, I'm going to have to go to a reading test to do that because they're not going to have passages here. So let me just jump onto someone else's test to do that. So we're going to go to my teacher test and see if we can find, you notice there's 3 types of tests: pending, which means that it's still a work in progress and anything can be done to a pending test; active, which means that it's kind of locked to where the students can use it; and archived, which means you've placed it on the shelf, electronically speaking, and the data is closed for that particular assessment. It doesn't throw the test away though, so you certainly could copy it when you're creating a new teacher test, copy an existing test, and use it again, change it up for more data. I'm going to just pretend we're creating a new test, but I'm going to go into someone else's test. And I'm going to see if I can find an ELA test. So here we're looking at someone else's from Region 11, their demo test for the demo. I don't think I want to mess with their test because they're probably using it for a training. So let me go to someone else's test. Here we go. We'll go to this practice test. Now, when you create a test, it will tell us who created this test. If you look, and I'm going to minimize that. If we scroll down here, it will say test creator. So if I was really on my site creating a test, it would say test creator Beth Libby. Yours would say your name. You could see that the people who created this test already have a couple tests loaded. And it's ELA grade 5. So let's add in something. We're going to go to the bottom of their test, click on the plus sign, and then of course we have a choice to make. We're going to go to the search item bank. We're going to choose resources because remember, with reading, with the language arts, you need to choose a story and then your questions that go with that story or that passage. So it's doing a lot of thinking. It's going through all of the item banks because I did not choose one. I could have shortened our wait time in doing that. And then you can see that we have 47 resources in this demo site to look at. You can see that we could have chosen a lexile. We could have chosen a word count or a genre. But let's just look for a story, and it tells us where the story's from, which item bank. Let's say that we've already read through these and we really like this story, Amalia's Finest Flower. So if I click on that little arrow, it shows me the story before it and the questions that are linked to that story. So we could look at that one, but we wanted to look at Amalia's Flower. Here we go. So let me click on that. We can collapse that one above us and look at Amalia's Finest Flower and read through that story. And let's say after we read it, we love it. So we're going to choose our questions now that go with that story. Again, if we think that this is a story that we want to use on our assessment. So obviously you would not be going through this quite as quickly. You would be reading these passages to see what you think of them. And let's say we want this question. And this question. This question now, are you noticing that these are low-level questions? What you can do is once you have them on your test, you can edit them to make that difficulty more, more appealing. You can also choose a constructed response because this must be part of a writing passage as well. Lots of different passages that go with that. But let's just say we want that particular passage that we chose and then the questions that we added. You can tell that it's thinking, so please commit to the click and wait for it to think. And in just a second, we'll see that our passage and our questions have been added to this assessment. So now we see the questions that were chosen by the person who created this test at the beginning. Then we see our passage that we chose and the questions that go with that. As we're going through this, you'll notice the little arrows. So perhaps I want this question down below the one before so I can move it, or just click on that arrow and it becomes question number 5. Also, you can edit these. You can edit the story as well, you'll notice, with just that click of the button there. But you can also edit the questions. So let's suppose that you don't like the way that something is worded. You want to create more difficulty, more rigor into the question. You can certainly do that by clicking on the edit icon and increasing the question weight. Okay. So here is the intro to our creating assessments with the new interface. Just like with any software platform, you need to play around and get familiar with the new tools. Please avail yourself to the new interface, but remember that that site is simply for practice. You'll need to go to Edaphoria directly if you want to really work on building an assessment. And remember that there are lots of resources available in the help section, and you're welcome to call ARE if you get lost and need a little direction. Thank you. Have a great 2018-19 school year.